Olney means business. For Black entrepreneurs and small business owners, that means you've got to hustle. Business in the neighborhood is primarily known for North 5th Street, with its vast assortment of storefronts lining both sides of the corridor. Olney Ave crisscrosses North 5th, and when you head east, it takes you to the front in Olney Shopping Center Plaza, where big corporate brands anchor the complex. Travel just a few more blocks and you're at Rising Sun Avenue, which has several blocks of mostly immigrant-run businesses.
If you mosey up north via Front Street to West Godfrey Avenue, there's another shopping center that boasts one of the newest, most eccentric, and most extensive Asian food emporiums in all of Philadelphia, a Korean-run H-Mart which opened up in September of 2020. In between Rising Sun and North 5th, there are pockets of activity, hidden gems off the beaten path. A restaurant here, a small business complex there. They dot the map with enterprises that speak to the diversity of Olney's makeup. We could, in fact, produce multiple seasons worth of episodes on the variety of entrepreneurs that exists in the Olney sphere. But in today's episode, we focus on Black entrepreneurship, with a couple of uniquely compelling examples of that in Olney. Before we dive into the topic and profile our two featured guests, let's revisit a previous guest from earlier this season in episode 2, Danya Benjamin of Danya's Dishes. Her story literally and figuratively helps us to set the table.
I've always had like that hustle mentality. In high school, I would braid hair for extra money. And then when I had my first apartment, I realized the money I was making wasn't enough and I needed to make another stream of income. So I thought hard like, I know I want to sell food, but what is the most cost efficient way I can do that? And so I realized if I sell people meal preps where I prep their meals for the entire week and they pay me a flat fee, I can then take a portion of that fee and then buy the groceries, make the food, and then just keep the profit. And it would be something that I wouldn't lose money on because everything is portioned. I know exactly how much I needed of each thing, so I wouldn't be overbuying. So I just broke it down and did the math and realized, which I'm good at math, remember that. I broke it down, did the math and realized that would be the best thing for me.
That hustle mentality Donia mentioned, it perfectly sums up the drive that motivates many folks in the neighborhood and in Philadelphia as a whole. When negative connotations of the word are shed, it's an awe-inspiring concept. To hustle is to TCB, take care of business. It is the act of embracing one's own personal will to manifest their dreams. It is to apply grit and ingenuity to make a better future for self, family, and community. Olney has its own brand of this. We'll call it the Olney Hustle.
Once the traditional homeland of the Lenape indigenous peoples, the Olney section of Philadelphia has changed dramatically since Europeans colonized the region in the late 1700s. Its history reflects the rise and decline of industrialization during the last century, in tandem with waves of immigration and migration by families from various parts of the world. Each successive generation of arrivals have contributed their own cultural traditions to the community, while having to negotiate the complexities of coexisting with neighbors from different geographic origins. Olney crackles with the energy of this dichotomy. Today, Olney is a linguistic multicultural melting pot. Its evolution reveals the multi-layered narratives of its residents who bring their diverse lived experiences and resilience to this mostly blue-collar neighborhood. In the second season of our podcast, we will highlight some of those stories, from garden growers to at-home chefs, community activists to youth mentors, small business owners to entrepreneurial artists, and more. You'll hear their voices and witness their journeys as they continue to make Olney the dynamic place that it is. A production of Olney Culture Lab of Culture Trust Greater Philadelphia In collaboration with Amber Art and Design, this is Audio Olney, a podcast exploring the beauty, complexity, and diversity of the Olney section of Philadelphia. Sit back and enjoy.
So here we are once again. We're here to discuss something that is dear to the history of Philadelphia, and it is the embodiment and entrepreneurial aspects of communities of color. In this instance, we're talking about Black-owned businesses.
In the last season, we got to talk with Mr. Gibson from the Gibson School of Music, which is a Black-owned business in Olney. And we also got to feature Chez Rosaire, which is an amazing Haitian restaurant in Olney. There's a lot of Black-owned businesses in Olney.
When you look at urban renewal, we always have to keep that in mind in terms of the fragility of some of these businesses that don't get the same financial support from banking institutions, that don't have the legacy of privilege that comes with inherited wealth, that we have to go out of our way to ensure and help secure that these businesses are supported and do survive. When you think of a community like Olney, which is a beautiful cross mix of everything you would want to see in an urban environment, definitely the immigrant and the BIPOC experience, there's a whole plethora of businesses that are thriving within that community because right in their location, they have the support that they need and give them the lifeblood to maintain as a small business. And definitely the Black community in Olney is rooted and close-knit. I would imagine that opening up a business in Olney is as difficult as anywhere. We have to make sure that we come together and be a patron to all these places to make sure that they survive, knowing like bricks in the house that if some of these businesses fail, that the whole experience of the community can fall down with it. So not only do we have to come together and support the Black businesses, but we have to support all the BIPOC businesses within the Olney community.
In this episode, we will feature two successful Black-owned businesses in Olney, Michael Crawford's Holla Athletics and Hipp Foods. What's especially interesting about their enterprises are the sectors that they operate in: athletic apparel and uniforms for Mr. Crawford and meat provisions for Mr. Hipp. And by meat provisions, we mean sausages and bacon. While we haven't done a scientific study on it, there are not a lot of Black-owned businesses within these sectors, at least in the Northeast or the East Coast.
On the one hand, it's really cool that we have them here in Olney. But on the other, why shouldn't we have more Black-owned businesses like theirs? While it's exciting to encounter unicorns in our midst, wouldn't it be better if they didn't feel like an endangered species? What also distinguishes Holla Athletics and Hipp Foods are the fact that their markets, supply chains, and distribution channels extend beyond the boundaries of the neighborhood and the state of Pennsylvania. And, in the case of Holla, even outside the country.
One more interesting thing to note as we delve into the stories of Holla and Hipp Foods are the owners themselves. They are at opposite ends of the journey. Michael Crawford is in the early stages of establishing Holla as a brand, while Hipp Foods has been around for almost half a century.
My name is Mike Crawford, aka Mike Holla, the owner of Holla Sporting Goods and Holla Athletic Apparel and Uniforms. I'm here on the North 5th, where I grew up at, not only section of Philadelphia. Well, Holla Sporting Goods is a full-fledged sporting goods store that sells equipment, accessories, anything from the referees to the parents in the stands and everything in between, as we always say. So we outfit everyone, pretty much, and we service the community. A majority of our stuff comes, our customers are the youth programs and high school programs in the area, the city of Philadelphia. I mean, we also do stuff outside of the tri-state area as well, but most of our business comes from relationships. That's what we've realized in this business is relationships and people I've met along my journey from playing youth sports or playing in high school, collegiate, semi-pro, and now these guys are coaching, teaching, and running programs. So it's based on a lot of relationships that we obtained throughout the years that keeps us going.
As we learned from our last episode on the Olney Eagles, Michael has been around organized youth sports almost all his life, first as a player, then as a coach. Fashion wasn't initially on the radar.
It's kind of funny how it started because, like I said, I've coached youth sports, football, track, basketball, baseball. I've coached all. And throughout my journey, I was always intrigued with uniforms and looking good. So even when it came to intramural basketball, I recall one year I was coaching the North Philly Blackhawks, like 5 and 6 year old basketball. We just had white T-shirts with numbers on them. Me, I went to Foreman Mills, wore white shorts, so we all look, pretty cool with shorts on and a shirt to give them that feel of the older kids. So growing up here in Olney and playing for Olney Eagles, that played a major part because we were always uniform, top from jersey, socks, pants. So we always looked the par. So as I transitioned from playing football to coaching, I wanted to kind of keep that tradition going, and I found myself in that niche driven area of uniforms and apparel. And once that started, I was pressing up. I bought myself a heat press from Stalls. I remember like $900, and we still have it. I talk about the Stall heat press all the time. And it kind of started in the basement, pressing up individual T-shirts and stuff like that for kids on the team, and then it grew to parents, and then another team, and then other pounds in the program. And then once I started a track program, Holla Track Club, we started that. We started out about 60 kids, and I had someone donate shirts to get pressed up with just a green T-shirt that was real loud that said Holla Track Club. We were like the only team with all these bright colors with a bunch of kids that had no track experience from North Philadelphia. And it was like, we started the program. It was something for the kids in North Philly to do outside of football in the off season. And then the uniform started with track. And then I started building a relationship with track programs. And it just kind of spiraled it from football to track to basketball to baseball.
Prior to going all in with Holla, Michael was an employee for the city of Philadelphia. Becoming a full-fledged business owner was a gradual process.
This stuff just came about. I was working for the city of Philadelphia for 7 years, mainly in the streets department. It was driving backhoes, digging ditches, running a jackhammer, fixing all the potholes in the city of Philadelphia. Up in the Northeast, I worked at the 6th Highway. And over time, those years, I was always coaching football, coaching a sport, doing something. Once I stopped playing, so I was like, after work, I just kept myself busy, coaching the youth and had my kids playing and stuff like that. But this kind of just like fell into my lap in a sense because I was doing it constantly, not realizing like, all right, I was building a brand, didn't even know I was building a brand. And then I had a buddy of mine that played with me when I was on the Eagles, LJ, with Strictly Graphics. I was like, I need a logo. And we came with the logo, and I wanted to find a name. I got the name Holla in college from one of my late friends that played ball with me. He was, he said I was always hollering at the ladies. So he kind of called me. He was like, Mike Holla, you always hollering at somebody. So that kind of stuck. And I was like, all right, Holla Athletics. Like everything was Holla. Track team was Holla Track Club. So I kind of stuck with everything Holla. I try to holla, 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 holla. Like on the Chappelle show, everything was Holla.
Once he realized he was all in, Michael threw caution to the wind and dove into entrepreneurship headfirst.
Never was into fashion and design, stuff like that. It was pretty much, I wanted to stay around what I love. My passion was always sports growing up. So it was kind of a no-brainer. Once I figured it out and saved enough money and kind of figured like, you know what, I'm going to make this happen. If I'm putting all this energy when I'm, working for the city of Philadelphia in between breaks and stuff like that, I would imagine if I'm doing it full time, the amount of, money I can make doing it on a regular basis and put all my energy into it. And that's what happened. So it kind of took off from there. It was like a journey. Some people said, you should have waited 3 years to being invested with the city of Philadelphia. I'm like, nah, I don't have time to wait. Most people are, that don't want to be successful are just afraid to take that chance. Like, I don't have a plan B. This has to work. And that's just the bottom line. If it doesn't work, then we're going to keep it. We're going to figure it out. Most successful people failed so many times. People don't even know how many times I failed at trying to figure this whole thing out. It's been many a long night staying up, having headaches, stressing myself out, trying to figure out like what can I do to be different from everybody else. And it's kind of now it's like just having that conversation the other day with the gentleman. Like, there's a lot of other people doing uniform and stuff like now, doing uniforms as well. But the difference is between me and them. I'm not competing with you guys. I'm trying to compete with the Nike, Under Armour, and Adidas. And we have a full-fledged sporting goods store, so we don't get the uniform deal. We're still going to get you with, some type of equipment or some accessories, anything like that. It's pretty much a one-stop shop for you guys. So that's where I'm at with everything. Like,
As Michael's in-home operations started to expand beyond capacity, he began to think about having a proper brick-and-mortar store. Being a lifelong Olney resident, the neighborhood was the most obvious choice of location.
So it went from idea in the basement of my home, pressing up with a heat press, pressing up T-shirts, to owning a manufacturer in Pakistan and Turkey, partnering up with these guys over there, and we're direct sourcing the uniforms. And having a store on the corridor of North Fifth was I grew up here. I grew up in Olney. Moved here in '86 on Ruscombe Street. Went to Olney Elementary. I would have went to Olney High, but I ended up on the Mass Mom. And it was a kind of a no-brainer. I was just trying to find the right location, and it was like this. I actually like stumbled upon. I was like walking the corridor, and I saw the storefront, and it was actually a young lady in here doing nails, and she wasn't doing so well. She actually wanted me to come in here with her. She was like, "Oh, I can do my nails in the back, and you do sporting goods up front." But I'm thinking the bigger picture. I was like, "All right, I'll wait and see." And then one day I walked past there. She wasn't even in the building no more. Then I got in touch with the owner, and I gave the city of Philadelphia my resignation papers October 4th of 2019. I signed my lease November of 2019.
5 months later, when COVID hit and shut down everything, Michael was literally on the other side of the planet. He shares how he managed to keep his nascent business afloat.
I was overseas at my factory at the time, and I was overseas in Saudi Arabia as well too. So when I'm sitting in my hotel room in Pakistan, Seattle, Pakistan, I hear some gentlemen talking outside my window, like on the balcony, and they're saying about masks and this, that, and the third, talking about masks. I'm like, what are they talking about? Then I get a text from people back here in the States asking me, saying, "Yo, you need to look into getting masks." I'm like, what are y'all talking about? They like, there's a pandemic. I'm like, what is a pandemic? What are we talking about? Talking about COVID-19. I had no clue what it was. And I'm laying up in my bed because we're in a different time zone. And I go out in the balcony. I'm a talkative guy. So I'm going to just go ask questions. So I hear the guys talking about masks. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? He's like, listen, we sell surgical masks, and we make them here in Pakistan. So I kind of jumped on it early. So I started selling masks. And then the thing about that, I was like, well, if this stuff's going to be around with the masks, I got to be creative with it. So we started making individual masks. We started making masks that different sports teams, Sixers, Eagles, Flyers, sororities, fraternities. I think I did some for the corridor, then all the Black Lives Matter stuff, all that stuff happened. So selling a mask kind of kept us afloat. That's the crazy part. So I started selling those, the surgicals, the KN95s. It was like I had money and I invested in that, and it kind of worked out. So we literally, the mass selling kept us going through the pandemic. We were like the only supplier in the area that had them. Like we physically had them on hand. So we were selling at the point. I was promoting on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. It was a point I started a website, started holding up a company called PhillyMedicalSupplies.com. Started selling them online to people from Puerto Rico to California, Georgia, Texas, all over. And that month, I never really did online advertisement and stuff like that and sales. But when I tell you that stuff, it was hand over fist. It was like so overwhelming. Like it was crazy, but it was a blessing. Like to be there in Seattle, Pakistan, them guys talking about masks and me listening and just trying to figure it out, thinking swift on something. Because everything in this, what I try to do, it's niche driven. I try to find whatever the latest fad or something that is not going to last long, but you got to get in and get out. That's my biggest thing. And then the mask thing lasted for us about what? We just took the masks out of the store. I donated a bunch of them to daycares and stuff. I was like, all right, people not even wearing them no more. So I still got a bunch of them in the back. I still got some customers come in asking for the masks. At this point, I just give them something. I have so many that I'm going to sell them to. You can just take them. You know what I mean? So that's what kept us afloat.
Michael was the right person in the right place at the right time. To paraphrase a famous quote, chance favored his prepared mind. But fast on the heels of the COVID shutdown, he was faced with another dilemma.
Hundreds of protesters had gathered here, and now police are trying to push them back to keep the peace.
They'd gathered hours before, furious at the death of 46-year-old George Floyd.
As with other American cities and communities, Olney and North Fifth Street became a site of racial uprising and looting after George Floyd's murder by the Minneapolis police in late May of 2020. Michael guarded his store for 2 nights as he watched chaos unfold around him. The only saving grace was he was local and his business was black owned.
Oh man, I stayed at the store. That was in the process of when we first were getting open. I was sleeping in my truck out front. We were, you got a right to protect yourself. I talked to the police out there. They're like, we overwhelmed. So people are just out here looting. I watched all these stores. Again, like I said, I live here. So I watched all these stores get broken into. Like the jewelry store, they put them out of business. Like when they broke all the stuff all up. I got videotape of that stuff. I watched the whole thing happen on this whole block, from the voice wire, whatever it's the cell phone stores, the jewelry stores. Everyone else was like, I'm going home. I'll figure it out. I can't let nothing happen to this. I got Malcolm X. Any means necessary. I gotta hold it down there, protect my store. So that's what I did. I stood out all night for a couple nights, and eventually, stuff get better. And it did. People, I guess you're not going to solve anything with these police keep killing us, the young black men like myself. But looting is not going to bring nobody back. So that was just all self gratification that you were doing stuff in your neighborhood where you grew up at. Most of these people are from here, and you're just going there and you still walk into these stores like nothing ever happened.
In the wake of the twin pandemics of COVID and the worldwide racial reckoning that began in the United States in the wake of the George Floyd murder, Michael and Holla Athletics have not only survived, it has thrived. In addition to the North Fifth Street store, Holla has expanded outside of Pennsylvania. Last year, Michael opened a second store in Miramar, Florida. Before planting his flag there, Michael spent a year traveling to Florida to do research and reconnaissance. Now, Michael's customers include the athletic program of school districts in Philadelphia, Cheltenham, Chester, Broward County, Florida, and many others. He understands the unique position that Holla occupies as a business and as a brand.
I always said I was the first black-owned sporting goods store. And even when I got down Florida, because I went down a year before doing my, my recon, as I call it, my due diligence, trying to find out the right location to have the store at down in Florida. And I was looking for other sporting goods stores, and I would go around, and people were like, oh, yeah, this is a sporting goods store. And I would get in there, and I'm like, this is not a sporting goods store. When you think sporting goods store, you're thinking of Dick's and how Modell's was. And when I would go in there, it was more so like a sneaker store that just happened to have some helmets and shoulder pads in there. So it wasn't an actual sporting goods store. And doing research, looking around the country, looking at other stores and talking to other people, I guess when you look at the definition of a sporting goods store, you're thinking of sports goods and equipment and stuff like that. We're not selling jeans and with certain stuff like that. So when I think of a sporting goods store, what we're doing, where no one else is doing this besides the big boxes. They call Dick's the big box. So even now, like I said, down in Florida, I've been to stores down there looking at them. I'm like, we're not the same. So I try to hone that title of the first black-owned sporting goods store because this is what we are. As no one else doing customized stuff like that. Even Dick's doesn't even do this. That's the difference between us and Dick's. If someone to say, what's the difference between you two? I mean, one, we customize everything. We don't just have a standard red, white, blue, black color compression shirt. We can customize it for you. We can get whatever color you want. Put numbers, names, team logos on the shirts. That's our slogan. As you see on the trailer, made to fit. So we're going to make sure the uniform is custom fit for your individual players.
So, what's next for Michael and Holla?
I can't worry about the next 5 years. I'm always trying to stay one step. I always try to say I'm 3 months ahead of everybody else in the business. So like right now, we're ready to roll out all our newer stuff, all our new turf tape, bicep bands, socks, leg sleeves, arm sleeves, sunglasses, shorts. We're coming out this year with athletic sports shorts. We just developed a new uniform pattern this year that actually I'm about to ship that out to California right now to a high school. So they'll be the first in these new uniforms that we just released. So I'm always kind of the constant evolution of Holla Athletics. evolve and grow, stay ahead of the curve.
From a newer entrepreneur exploring the global economy to a seasoned businessman with more than 50 years of experience, we turn to Ed Hipp's journey into the food industry, which began long before Michael was even born. In 1965, Mr. Hipp started modestly working in a Philadelphia meat processing plant, Scheinman Meat Provisions, and gradually gained experience with each successive position he took. After opening and running a supermarket in 1971 with marginal success, he then decided to parlay his growing knowledge of the food business into developing his own products. Working with several Philadelphia-based manufacturers, the company created its first two products in 1975, hot and mild beef sausage. And with that, Ed Hipp Foods, Inc. was born. The company specializes in beef and turkey food products. Its annual gross revenue is in the range of 2 to 3 million. The company makes and distributes about 60,000 pounds of meat products on a weekly basis within the greater Philadelphia tri-state area. What they don't sell, they donate. Ed Hipp Foods, Inc. has operated in the Olney neighborhood since 2006.
My career actually started back in 1964, where I was in a local, at the corner store, I learned how to cut meat, trimming meat and stuff like that. Not a butcher, but just being able to cut meat and everything. And I made a delivery to this processing house, food processing house, which was called Scheinman Provision. It was a Jewish company. They made kosher products. And from where I was working, we delivered some products there. Or I think it was the other way around. I think we went to pick some products up, and they had a sign in their window that said "Butcher Needed." So while I was there, I filled out the application. I'm not a butcher. I'm a meat cutter, which is a different. And I was just crossing my fingers that everything would work out all right. But I signed the application, didn't pay any attention. And about 5 weeks after that, they called me. And it's funny that they called me because I had just left the other job about a week, and I was actually looking for a job in the meat industry. And they called me, and they said they would like for me to come in. I went in, and I thought they wanted me for a butcher. So I was trying to figure out how was I going to do that once they found out that I wasn't a butcher. But when I went in, they asked me if they wanted me to work upstairs. They wanted me to work in the kitchen. And in the kitchen, they were making hot dogs, hot sausages, bolognas, salamis, liverwurst, those type of things. And that was interesting. And at first, I was basically a utility man, cleaned up around there. And as each person left, I felt that position. Until it came to the point that I was the person who was really making the products up every morning. I got a list on we'll be making we call it heavy stuff, bolognas and salamis, and just the list of what would be made that day. Bolognas, how many salamis, how many hot dogs, how many sausages would be made. And basically that was my job. I learned how to chop product. I learned how to stuff product. I learned how to tie product. I learned how to smoke product. I learned how to pack product, just by working there. And in 1970, I left there because I had the opportunity to own my own grocery store. And it was a good store. It was marginal. It was marginable, but it really wasn't that profitable. And I left there in 1974. And at that time, I became a jobber. Well, I had my own business doing that. A jobber is a guy who gets deals from wholesale houses and takes it to grocery stores and see what they need. And from that, you make percentage off of that. You buy it from the wholesaler, you take it to the store, he retails it. and I make a percentage of. At that time, it was like 10%. But at that time, we talking about 1964. 10% was a lot of money. You know, it was good. 10% is 35 to 40% now. You know, and I did pretty well with that.
At this juncture, Mr. Hipp was fortunate enough to have his previous employer, the owner of Scheinman Provisions, take an interest in his development. In fact, he became a champion of Hipp's aspirations.
The guy that I used to work for, where I used to manufacture the sausage for, I was going back to him getting sausage, but I was getting quite a bit. So he was saying, well, what is something that you want to do? So I told him I would like to manufacture my own sausage. So I said, but the only problem with that is that I need a loan, I need a place to go, you know, I need to get the government inspected. And he said, well, you can do that here. When he said you can do that here, that changed my whole career. You know, because actually I had a building, I had the chopper, I had the grinder, I had the stuffer, I had the smokehouse, I had the packing room, and all I had to do with him was he bought the raw material, was pay him a percentage off of that, which at that time was a pretty high percentage for him because he was making like 20%. But he was very happy with it. And I was like making, at that time, I was making pretty close to like 20%, you know. So it was like a 40% margin there. And we established a relationship and we did very well together up until maybe about, I would say maybe about 10 years ago. About 10 years ago, we severed our relationship. And that was because the owner died, and his grandson took over, and his grandson wasn't very fair, you know. And at that particular time, I found other manufacturers that I could work with. I partnered with. We're partners, actually. And that started me into this career.
Given Mr. Hipp's deep understanding of what was already available in the market, he was able to find a market advantage by specializing.
Our first two products was my beef sausage, hot and mild smoked beef sausage. That was my niche. I had beef sausage, and they weren't doing beef at the time. Mostly pork, you know, pork mixed in with chicken or whatever, you know. But that I had a solid background there because I worked with some Jewish folks. I worked in a kosher house, you know. So the product that I was making was lean beef sausages. You know, I can't call them kosher because you need a rabbi. But the ingredients that was going into them was basically the same thing. And that was my niche. And I sold it in different neighborhoods. That product I can sell just about in any neighborhood. And I just did hot and mild sausage. And it just inspired me because people was asking for more products. So I started my breakfast sausage, hot and mild. You need two. It had to be hot and mild. Yeah. From there, I worked on bolognas. That didn't last too long, but it was a good product at the time. Salamis. Then I worked on Polish sausage, hot and mild. Then I started doing turkey bacon, beef bacon, Canadian turkey, scrapple, and I kept adding to my line. Even right now, I'm planning on adding some more to my line. So actually, that's how I started, and that's where I am now.
When asked about how he was treated in an industry where corporate leadership was populated by mostly white men, Mr. Hipp reflected on the barriers he encountered.
Well, you know, it's quite a few. You know, I don't want to get into, you know, saying people were racist, even though some might have been, but nobody really showed me that. It was just certain turn downs that people. Certain times, people just couldn't believe it was me. They would see the product in the stores and everything. You know, when I showed up, being a black man, they just didn't believe it was my product. You know, how did you do that? You know, I had one particular guy one time, he wanted to know, where did I get my money from? He as if he thought I sold drugs or something. You know, how did you get financed? Who financed you, you know? And my finance was making my profits and turning it right back over. You know, making profit, turn it right back over. Didn't try to live above my means or anything. You know, when I first started off, I was living on $50, $60 a week. You know, but I was seeing myself with $100 that I could put away. But I always took what I made and put back because it helped me to buy it. So I was able to do that. I seen it increase, and then I buy more merchandise, and then I just keep it going like that.
Then there were the naysayers from places he didn't expect.
I've heard people over talking at certain times, I wouldn't buy anything from that guy, And these are your own people. Not even know it was me. Being right in my presence, talking about the product and talking about, I heard there was a black man running this business, I wouldn't buy nothing from that guy. I don't trust him. And I'm there, but they just didn't know it was me. I mean, those are the type of things that that's going to happen, and you have to just gear yourself up and motivate yourself, to keep going.
While some might feel both surprised and disheartened to hear those expressions of what could be called internalized racism, Mr. Hipp shares how he was able to derive motivation from the many challenges that he faced.
I had one of a manufacturer who made my beef bacon at that particular time, found out that it was a good product and that it was selling in other areas. And he asked me, could he sell it like up New York or somewhere, where I wasn't? He would give me a percentage. Well, evidently he took that product and took it to New York or wherever he took it and found out that was a magnificent product. And I never got my 8%. And about a year later, he had his label on all the product. And when I complained about it, his only response was, and this is true with everything, he said, it's not the same product. Although it looks the same and it tastes the same and everything, because he changed one ingredient. Because he changed one ingredient, it made it a different product, and basically I didn't have a leg to stand on. I couldn't argue it. So that has happened. You take your people that partner with you, manufacture with you, and it's called a double cross. I've been double crossed a lot, but that's part of doing business. And there's times I've been double crossed and knew I was double crossed, but couldn't do anything about it because they were producing my product for me, So I would just bite the bullet and bear the pain. When those situations happen, you have to learn to outgrow those people. You outgrow them, and then when you outgrow them, is that you start to either manufacture yourself or you find another producer that's willing to work with you closer. And that's your way of paying anybody back. Just outgrow them.
With the decades-long success of his company, Mr. Hipp could most definitely have chosen to rest on his laurels. The reason he hasn't is because doing so would fly directly in the face of his work ethic. In 2019, Mr. Hipp had the opportunity to pitch his line of products to Walmart executives in Arkansas as part of their effort to feature more American-made products in their stores. He landed a contract. However, it ultimately was not all that it was cut up to be.
Walmart was impressive. Walmart was impressive. Even more impressive that the fact that I had to turn them down. I turned Walmart down because I wasn't making enough. Their percentage was like maybe about 10%, but it wasn't enough. And then with them, they're so particular. I had to have a certain type of insurance. And then they only wanted one particular product. They wasn't carrying my whole line. Matter of fact, I only wanted to put in 2 products. They wouldn't want to carry that. So when I factored it out and making the delivery and the people that you had to pay, and they only wanted one product, they didn't want to put it in the warehouse and take it all over the world. They just wanted me to be local. It didn't pay off. So that's something that I had to turn down. So I felt pretty good about that. I'm turning you down.
By the time the Walmart contract came and went, Mr. Hipp had already established a 43-year track record of selling his products to regional grocery store chains like Acme, Giant, Brown's, ShopRite's, etc. But Mr. Hipp imparts an important lesson about wisely choosing where to sell, because not all locations make financial sense.
Well, just a couple of weeks ago, Joe got a call from a Giant, and they opened up 2 new stores. One on Broad Street, and I think the other one's in Richboro, PA. And we're servicing those stores now, and they have more stores, And the thing about it, a lot of stores, geographically, I've turned down. I just can't do it. I've turned down stores. I've turned down a lot of stores, because it's not geographically, Sometimes you lose money trying to make money. You have to be careful with that.
This hard-earned wisdom can only come with the decades that Mr. Hipp has invested in building his business. Sage advice from a sharp yet humble business guru. So, what other advice would he give aspiring business owners who are just starting out?
You have to really come up with a really good product, and you have to really stick by that product. But also, your employees makes a difference. If it's a sandwich shop, you have to train your employees how to be polite, and that in itself gets you over a little bit more. It gets you polite. Somebody will come back to your store because of an employee. People won't come back to your store because of an employee. And the owner never even knew that situation occurred. That person, the buyer would say, that person was very rude to me. That store stinks. People in there are very rude. They never come back, and they'll say that's the company. So you have to make sure you have the right employees in anything you do. And the key to that is having good people working with you. Be able to establish that you have to have a good firm of solid employees that really know what they're doing. I'm very fortunate in that area. Our employees really know what they're doing.
At this stage in his career, Mr. Hipp is thinking about succession, but not before taking care of his people. You'll hear one of his employees, Jill, chime in.
If someone make me an offer that I can't refuse, I will sell. But at the same time, in doing that, I want to make sure all my employees are set. That's one of my main things. I want to make sure if I go, that whoever buys the business, give them a better position than what I even had. And that's all of it. I have one guy with me now, 80 years old. He's been with me for 23 years. He likes the business. Matter of fact, his whole thing is he don't want to retire because he thinks if he retires, he's going to die. So he's
very adamant about that.
Right, exactly, right. So that's my plan, to go as long as I possibly can, to try to stay as healthy as I possibly can. And the employees help me with that. If the opportunity comes to sell, I'll sell.
Until last fall, Ed Hipp Foods distribution warehouse was located in a facility off of North Masher Street near the SEPTA rail stop. In September 2022, they found another facility just up the road on 2nd Street that better suited their needs. What a great thing for Olney that they decided to stay in the neighborhood.
You can learn more about Ed Hipp Foods at edhipfoodsync.com. That's Ed, HIPP, Foods, Inc.com. His products can be found in grocery store chains across eastern Pennsylvania, Delaware, and South Jersey, including in Collins, ShopRite, and Olney. And if your store doesn't carry it, request that they do. The website for Holla Athletics is HOLLA athletics.com, or just drop by the Olney store at 5625 North 5th Street and tell Michael we sent you.
We hope you found some inspiration in the stories we've shared on this 5th episode of our 2nd season of Audio Olney. We'll return soon for our 6th and final episode of this 2nd season, where we bring our podcast full circle as we talk and share stories with 2 of our previous guests from season 1.
Audio Olney is a production of Olney Culture Lab of Culture Trust Greater Philadelphia in collaboration with Amber Art and Design. Narration and deep thoughts were provided by Linda Fernandez and Kier Johnston. Sound design and engineering by June Lopez. Research and script writing by Ambrose Liu. And additional support for this episode provided by Verissa McMickens Blair. Funding for Audio Olney is provided by Independence Public Media Foundation, with additional support from William Penn Foundation and PICO.